The Kethmori had ruled the Andromeda Spiral for over 50,000 years. Their sleek, predatory forms moved through the cosmos like death itself, their bioengineered ships consuming entire star systems to fuel their endless expansion. No species had ever challenged their supremacy and survived. They were evolution's ultimate expression, perfect hunters, flawless strategists, apex predators on a galactic scale. Until they encountered humanity. High Executor Vashtar floated in his command chamber, his forearms manipulating holographic displays that showed the latest intelligence reports from the Milky Way. The humans had appeared seemingly overnight, their primitive vessels stumbling through hyperspace like children learning to walk. The Kethmori had initially dismissed them as another species destined for the feeding pools. That assessment had been premature. Executor, his intelligence coordinator, hissed through bioluminescent patches along her neck. The human colony on Kepler 186f has vanished. Vashtar's predatory eyes narrowed to slits. Destroyed by our advanced scouts? No, Executor. Vanished. The entire planet shows no signs of human habitation. Our scouts found only empty settlements and abandoned infrastructure. Perfectly preserved, but completely vacant. This was the 14th such report in as many cycles. Human colonies throughout the Orion Arm were simply disappearing. Not destroyed, not conquered, just empty. As if the humans had never been there at all. Perhaps they flee before our might, suggested Warprime Zekthor, his biomechanical enhancements clicking with satisfaction. Their primitive minds finally comprehend the futility of resistance. But Vashtar had survived 50 millennia by trusting his instincts over his subordinates' optimism. Something was wrong. Prey didn't simply vanish. They fought, they screamed, they begged. They didn't execute perfectly coordinated evacuations across dozens of star systems without leaving a trace. The answer came 3 cycles later when the Kethmori fleet arrived at what their intelligence suggested was humanity's industrial heartworld. Instead of a thriving manufacturing center, they found a system-wide graveyard. Automated defense platforms drifted silent and dark. Orbital stations hung empty in the void. The planet's surface showed no signs of current habitation. But it also showed no signs of evacuation. Executor, his xenoarchaeologist, reported after studying the abandoned facilities, these installations were not evacuated. They were edited. Precision strikes have removed only biological matter and consciousness-bearing technology. Everything else remains untouched. The level of surgical precision required is unprecedented. Vashtar studied the data with growing unease. The humans hadn't fled. They had performed what could only be described as tactical extinction, erasing themselves from existence before the Kethmori could claim them. But why? What purpose? Did such elaborate suicide serve? The answer became horrifyingly clear when his fleet attempted to return to Kethmori space. The hyperspace beacon network that had guided Kethmori expansion for millennia was gone. Not destroyed, simply absent. As if it had never existed. Navigation systems that had functioned flawlessly for 50,000 years suddenly couldn't locate their home worlds. Star charts that had been memorized by countless generations of navigators now showed empty space where thriving Kethmori colonies should exist. Impossible, Zekthor snarled, his biomechanical claws scraping against his command throne. Our colonies span thousands of systems. They cannot simply disappear. But they had. Probe after probe returned with the same impossible data, empty space where Kethmori civilization had stood for millennia. Worlds that should have teemed with billions of his species now showed no signs they had ever been inhabited. That's when Vashtar finally understood humanity's strategy. While the Kethmori had focused on physical expansion and military might, humans had quietly mastered something far more insidious: temporal engineering. They hadn't just evacuated their colonies, they had retroactively edited them out of history itself. And in doing so, they had turned the Kethmori's greatest strength against them. The Kethmori were perfect predators, but predators required prey. They were apex conquerors, but conquerors needed something to conquer. They had built their entire civilization around the consumption and domination of other species. Without victims, without conquered territories, without the constant influx of resources from subjugated worlds, Kethmori society began to collapse. But the humans had gone further than simple historical deletion. They had created a temporal paradox specifically designed to unravel apex predator species. By erasing their own existence from the timeline before first contact, they had eliminated the Kethmori's opportunity to feed on them. This created a causal loop that rippled backwards through history, systematically undoing every conquest that had led the Kethmori to human space. Each undone conquest weakened the foundation of Kethmori expansion. Each retroactively prevented feeding weakened their bioengineered evolution. Each temporal edit made their next conquest slightly less likely to have occurred. Vashtar watched in helpless fury as his ship's historical databases began rewriting themselves in real time. Glorious victories became incomplete records. Conquered species flickered between existence and non-existence. The Great Kethmori Empire, which had spanned 50,000 years in countless star systems, was being systematically unwritten from reality. Executor, his science coordinator's voice carried notes of existential terror. Our temporal integrity is destabilizing. We're becoming uncertain. Vashtar looked down at his forearms and watched one of them fade in and out of existence. His biomechanical enhancements, evolved from the consumption of a species conquered 30,000 years ago, flickered like failing holograms as that conquest was retroactively prevented. In desperation, he activated a quantum-locked message beacon, technology stolen from a species whose name he could no longer remember. The message was simple, aimed at any intelligence that might someday encounter it. The humans are not prey. They are not even predators. They are something worse, they are gardeners. They do not hunt or conquer. They simply edit. They remove from existence anything that threatens their vision of how reality should be arranged. We thought ourselves the apex of evolution. We were wrong. The apex is not the perfect hunter. It is the perfect curator of existence itself. The message beacon drifted through space as the last Kethmori ship faded from reality. Within moments, even the beacon's memory banks began editing themselves, removing references to a species that had never existed. In a parallel timeline that had diverged exactly 50,000 years earlier, Dr. Sarah Martinez of the Temporal Research Institute reviewed her latest experiment data. The computer models showed that a hypothetical apex predator species, designated Subject K in her files, would have made galactic expansion impossible for any peaceful civilization. The simulation had run perfectly. By introducing certain quantum uncertainties into the local timeline, her team had successfully prevented such a species from ever evolving in the first place. Another successful prevention protocol, she noted in her log. The galaxy remains safe for peaceful development. She paused, frowning at a strange feeling she couldn't quite identify. For just a moment, she had the oddest sensation that something had been watching her from empty space. Something vast and predatory and infinitely hungry. But when she looked up at the night sky through her laboratory window, she saw only stars. Beautiful, peaceful stars in a galaxy that had never known the terror of apex predators. Sarah smiled and returned to her work, never knowing that she had just erased the most successful predator species in galactic history from existence itself. After all, the best gardeners were the ones who removed the weeds so thoroughly that no one ever knew they had been there in the first place.